Robert Frost, and somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that's made all the difference. So, how I came to the Quakers through the U.S. Air Force by other Quakers that I met in Germany, and post-war Germany. And by the way, it wasn't during World War II, it was 47, which was 2 years after the war ended. So that's when I was assigned to Germany, and that was during the airlift to Berlin. And it sounds ironic that somebody be interested in Christian matters and rehabilitation over there in a war-torn country, but Quakers were, and they were doing wonderful work, and that's what I want to talk to you about today, and that's how they influenced me. This couple, Harold and Ann Coons, he was from Kansas and she was from Virginia, at one of those very conservative meetings in Virginia that was out on the sand dunes in Eastern. One of the old meetings, and that fascinated me because they had a meeting house literally on the sand dunes, and I think the name of it was Rescue Meeting. Anyway, he came from a church in Kansas, and incidentally, it was the same church that Wade preached in Sunflower, Kansas, but my friend wasn't there then. He was off in school. He didn't have Wade as a minister, but I thought that was a coincidence since Jones from Kansas, and also Wade and Velma served us for many years, and what was it about the Quakers that was unique? How did they differ from other people that were working there? We had a old building, a bombed out rug market that a group of people got together and volunteers and started this mission like a center for young people. We had a Youth for Christ on the Saturday nights, other nights when they were called for, when preachers were there that couldn't be there on Saturday. But we reconditioned it and put in glassware. All of the glass had been broken out during the bombing, and started having a program there. We had a lot of activities besides just those related to Christian work. We had folk dancing, we had instruments, people brought accordions and instruments in. They had little music groups. They especially like American records that people would furnish, some of the GIs could furnish them. They liked Burl Ives, as I remember, and they liked to learn to jitterbug, but that wasn't very popular because some of the people didn't approve of dancing. We had people from every religious group, and the two Quakers that came for preaching on Saturday night, Youth for Christ, that was their draw there, and that was an evangelical movement around Chicago. I think it started with Moody Bible Institute. Anyway, they were very active there, and these two Quakers spoke German. He preached in German, and that was one of the big influences. What I'm trying to get across is how they influenced me when a lot of the other preachers didn't. And I compared their arrival with the arrival of Billy Graham, who came in with 2 airplanes, and I helped unload one of them because my friend was working for a chaplain that had him over there. Anyway, my 2 Quaker friends came on a cattle boat. Now, I'm not sure it was the one that, the first one that I met them, but they referred to their trip across as with the cattle barge, and they ate sandwiches all the way across. And boat travel then, that was in 47 and 48 and 49. Boat travel took sometimes around 10 days. It took me 13 days to get across with on a GI troop ship, 13 days. And they exemplified the simplicity that Quakers claim is one of their strongholds, the simplicity of coming on a cattle boat and eating sandwiches instead of coming on a luxury airliner where it's just a matter of hours. And I want to compare the Quaker testimonies and preaching with that of the other preachers we had. We had from every denomination there. The one was Gil Dodds, the Olympic runner. He was a gold medal winner back in the 40s. And he was a dynamic preacher from Church of the Brethren, which I like because it had Church of the Brethren has a peace testimony like Quakers. And Quakers and Mennonites and Church of the Brethren, the three historic peace churches. And he was a popular minister there with on Saturday night. And the two Quakers spoke German, and I don't remember any other American preachers that came over there that could handle German, but Harold told me he had learned it in the school, and I thought that was amazing that he could preach in German and draw a big crowd. He was a popular preacher for the German people because he spoke their language, and that was a drawing card for me because that he could do that, and I was trying my best to learn what I could of the German. I had a little at home because grandparents were German, and at the table we'd often call out food in the German names. But I admired that very much, and later on when I checked on them at their college, Asbury College was what their work was, and she became a German teacher up there, but Harold preached in German, and that was a big thing. Simplicity, he was, like I said, he exemplified the Quaker testimony of simplicity by their mode of travel, their mode of dress. They had 2 suitcases. Other people came with trunks of goods and loudspeaker equipment and all that, but not in the case of the Quakers. I met them at the Bahnhof, the train station downtown there, and was immediately impressed by their humility and their dedication. They had sent over 100 care packages to Germany as a matter of faith. I think they cost $5 each, plus the postage, which didn't cost as much as it does today by any means. But they had the addresses of who received these care packages. Now, a care package had perishable food or non-perishable food, canned goods. Spam was a big item. Some of you may remember that from your care, Project Care. On it, we get letters in the mail about. But that peanut butter was a big item that the Germans just loved, and it was new to them. And their bread was coarse, and it was good with peanut butter. And the care packages made a big hit. In fact, it's a matter of, I won't say life or death, but it sure did come in handy for the German people who were hungry, actually very, very hungry. at the time, and that they didn't have a child feeding program. Quakers didn't, like they did in World War I, after World War I, and that figures big in the Quaker influence too, because if you were Quaker in Germany, you were something else, because that's one reason he was immediately accepted by his congregations, or his people came to hear him, and also because people remember the child feeding programs from World War I, after World War I. What did that amount to? Well, it came in handy for hundreds of German people. They set up stations where milk and pap and baby food was distributed, and I can tell you that that was well known all around the world. I once, after a class in college, a friend of mine had a new car. It wasn't new, but it was first a car he had, and he wanted me to go riding, and he said he wanted to stop by and see a lady that was on his paper route when he did, and she was Christian and wanted to know where we went. It had been Sunday afternoon, wanted to know where we went to church, and I said I didn't go because there wasn't a meeting around, a Quaker meeting. Oh, she said, I wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been for the child feeding programs in Germany after World War I. Well, that's not unusual, or at least in my experience it didn't. Not only that, on the local, in this country, I ran into many people that had many good words to say about Quakers because they associated with that child feeding program. And on an international scale, if you remember, the Quakers won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1948. Well, during the war, there were 3 Quakers that tried to get in contact with Hitler, wanted an audience with Hitler because they wanted to talk to him about how he was treating the Jews, and they wanted to organize a passage out of Germany for the Jewish people being persecuted. They didn't get an audience with Hitler, but they got an audience with Goering, and you know why? Because he had been fed by the Quakers after World War I. So, cast thy bread upon the waters, and then after many a day it will return to thee. And that comes back to me, and it's come back to me recently, but that's another matter, and I won't go into that. I want to talk more about how the Quakers influenced me. That was the purpose of Joan asked me to come. Anyway, he was an intellectual, and he'd been to Harvard College, Harvard University. She couldn't go to Harvard because it wasn't co-ed then. That was in the 40s. Only men, it was a men's college, and only men. She went to a seminary in town, in Boston University or something. Anyway, I think that's where he learned his good German, but anyway, he wanted to visit different people in Germany, and they had a list of their care package recipients, but along with that, he had his own list, and the philosopher Martin Heidegger, don't ask me what he stood for, because I've tried to read about him, but I couldn't understand it. But anyway, it meant a lot to Harold, and I drove him down to Freiburg University, which is down in the south part, which is an hour or so from where we were stationed. And he spent a couple of hours with one of the greatest philosophers alive, and I don't know, he told me what they talked about. I went out to see the cathedral there. The cathedral was the tallest one spire. 'Cause, I think the tallest spire cathedral. Now, Cologne has two spires that are taller, but this had one. And then there's another one on the way in a city named Ulm that has one spire. And I think Freiburg, anyway, I went out to see that, and he was ready when I got back, then to go back and come back. But not only that, he had connections with the family of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Now, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran minister and a pacifist. He didn't believe in killing. He didn't believe in war. And he was naturally opposed to Hitler and all that Hitler was doing. And he was on the list. He was on the blacklist. But he managed to stay free of that until there was a plot to kill Hitler, to assassinate Hitler. And that was a famous plot in secret to place a bomb in a meeting in Bavaria. And I don't know what the connection was, but Bonhoeffer had encouraged it. And in his writing, he wrote letters from prison, like Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a martyr, as well as Bonhoeffer was a martyr, because he was in on this plot to kill Hitler. And if you know the story, if you remember that, the bomb went off. It was placed under a table, and the place they were meeting had old furniture from castle furnishings, and the wood was all oak, and it was chunky and thick and heavy, and they had placed the bomb in a satchel under a leg of the table, and it went off, but it didn't kill Hitler. Well, my thing about Harold was he was interested in that family, because Bonhoeffer's sister-in-law, named Regina Bethke, was a recipient of a care package, and he went to visit and became friends because he knew a lot about Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer had come to the U.S. and studied or taught at Columbia in New York, and he wanted to go back because that's where he said he was led back to Germany because of conditions, and he felt like that's where he was needed. But he wrote the letters from prison, which is a classic, and he was one of the martyrs. He and Martin Luther King were the two martyrs of the 20th century. But Harold could converse with the sister-in-law. Now, she was a sister-in-law of Dietrich, because Dietrich's brother was in on the plot also, so they both were slain, or both assassinated. So Harold was an intellectual, and he had connections with other intellectual people there in Germany, and that interested me a lot, because I mean he knew somebody that had given their life for and had written about his wrestling with the devil, if you will. About he didn't believe in killing, but yet they had all decided that the only answer to the problem of the war was Hitler, and that he had to be done away with. And the thing that I knew somebody that was connected with all that planning and all that intrigue, and was a winning factor for it. So I've covered simplicity, I've covered his intellectual thing, I've covered his preaching. He was fundamental, I would say. I mean, he later on he became dean of that seminary, Asbury Seminary, like Earlham had a school of religion. Well, the board at Asbury thought they needed more emphasis on religion, because that's what it started out as a Methodist fundamental college, and they established a seminary, and Harold was the dean of it. Other things that he was a pacifist, and that was new to me, except for Gil Dodds. That he was the only preacher that I grew up in a Christian home where we had to go to Sunday school church, and we never talked about the war. During World War II, it never entered anybody's mind whether it was moral or not. But now in the service, the soldiers would talk. We'd have big discussions at night about the morality of what was going on here, especially in Germany, how the German people were treated, and that was another attractive feature about the Coons. They didn't look upon the German people as us and them. They looked upon them as brothers and sisters, and that was unusual because we had, as I say, preachers coming through there, ministers and dedicated people, and the Germans, I mean, we spoke to them from behind a speaker, and that was the limit of their association. I mean, they'd been the enemy, and they caused all that trouble. So, but not with Harold and Ann. I mean, they were friends, as I've indicated. They had many friends through those care packages, and that's. I hope I've made it clear why they'd influenced me and other people. They had a big following, and so big that John J. McCloy is. If you look him up, he was head of the civilian government in the occupation of Germany. He asked Harold to stay there permanently in Germany with the job of ministering and doing what he was doing with us in Youth for Christ. And he did, the connection there was his interpreter. McCloy's interpreter was a Christian lady, and she had come to Youth for Christ and met Coons, and that's how a high government official. He was as influential as Dwight Eisenhower, who was the leading general in in the occupation, the military occupation of Europe, and McCloy was a civilian. So, I mean, those things you can't overlook. I mean, when he's called on to stay over there, and he was offered a commission in the Air Force, because the Air Force headquarters was in Wiesbaden, where I was stationed. He had the military people approach Kuhn to be a chaplain, and with a high rank and a good salary. And he said no, he couldn't. He'd preach anywhere they wanted him to, but he couldn't be a part of the service because he didn't believe in it. And you can't overlook strong testimonies like that. And that's he stayed, and he had many preaching missions, but he wouldn't wear a uniform or be a part of the service. And I don't know how they probably paid him something. They didn't have any money. We'd take up collections for them, and I don't think of anything else, any other influence. Do you have any questions about all these things about the military? May be strange to you, or you may have questions. Yeah.
When and
Judy?
where was your first Quaker meeting when you returned to the States?
The first one I attended
Yeah.
was there. That was another a feature. I never heard a woman preach before. I mean, in the church, grew up in a Baptist church, and in fact, I went to Sunday school 8 years without missing a day. That's how strong we had. That's how much the church and Sunday school was emphasized. And I'd never been to a meeting, and they had. One day we were wondering about a place to meet. They thought they had to, some of them thought they had to go be in a church. And they said, no, said, we'll meet here. We were on the way to a place for lunch, and they said, wanted to have a meeting, and we just stopped in the park and had a meeting there in the park, sat on the ground. It was a gathered meeting too. So that was the first one.
Was that the one in the States or in Germany?
What?
Was that in the States when you returned, or was that in Germany?
I'm sorry, Judy, I don't hear.
Maybe John could take it.
Yeah.
She's asking, what was your first meeting in the United States?
In the United States, let's see, I have a hard time thinking about it. I remember, that's when I came to Friendsville, the real meeting, when I came to Friendsville. Because I came there from Missouri, and there had been a meeting in Carbondale, Illinois, across the Mississippi River, from where I lived at the time. I was in school there, and it was in Friendsville.
So you connected with people in Friendsville first.
And that was in '54. And what about
When were you and Lee married?
When was I?
What year was that?
What year were you married?
In '56.
So
I met Lee in Friendsville.
Oh, okay.
Now she was working for a council of Southern Mountain Workers, and she was supposed to be there a month at Friendsville to start a recreation program. It was big on basketball, and physical ed only existed for basketball. And she was asked to come there to start musical games and dancing and singing, folk singing, and that's what she did for a month.
That was at Friendsville? I thought you were in Berea area.
Council of Southern Mountain Workers was an organization out of Berea, Kentucky.
Okay.
And they served all the schools and institutions in Appalachia. They have a certain number of Appalachian counties where they didn't have any recreation programs. She was asked to come there. Not only that, there's all kinds of social matters, but that she was asked.
So she went from the Berea area down to Friendsville.
She traveled around all over Appalachia. I'd go meet her in Virginia on the weekends after I left Friendsville. And then we saw each other on her trips around Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Georgia, Alabama, all the states that had Appalachian mountain areas. She would go where she was invited, and she was invited to Friendsville because Lindley Best came to the conferences of the council of Southern Mountain Workers, and they had a school, 100 institutions. There were lots of secondary schools in the mountains that had boarding, like Friendsville Academy had a boarding set up, and they had a farm, a dairy, and Hyman Settlement School, which later on we worked up there for 2 or 3 years. It's where Carl was born.
Yeah. Well, that's talking about her. How did you happen to end up in Friendsville, where you met her?
Well, I was in college, and I kept up with reading about Quakers, and I thought
Were you teaching in
I
Friendsville?
tried to, yeah. I didn't last. I wasn't very good teaching. Any other questions?
Probably 100, but I'll think
Yeah.
of them.
Well, okay, you call me and I'll
What
be
do you
glad.
know he did all that? She was my bosom buddy for years and years, over 60 years.
Yeah.
You know all that. She's just so modest, I guess.
Yeah. More than that, Judy. I mean, we knew you before we moved out to the farm where we
Yeah.
lived. And you and Victor were going to meeting on the circle there we're going to meeting at this on Circle Park and where UT is in the Presbyterian Center.
I don't know.
That's where we met. And that was more than 60 years.
That was in Friendsville.
I don't know. I can't figure that out. You don't remember that?
No.
Victor helped me move out there where I live now.
Well,
He helped me move there from Paper Mill Road.
right. Did you go to the Friends Church when it was on Washington Street?
We did. We used to walk. She was pregnant with Carl, and we'd walk from 11th Street out to Washington Avenue to the church, the old church there.
Yeah.
When we came back from Heinemann to go to school for one term. I needed one course that they didn't teach any other time except spring term, and we'd walk from 11th Street where we lived out to.
So where did you take that course at UT?
What course was it? I don't
You
remember.
said-
It was some
was it-
psychology.
Was it at UT? No.
I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, and we're getting away from the subject. I'm wondering if you have questions about Quaker influence on a soldier. By the way, it's either Fox or James Naylor was offered a commission in Cromwell's army, and he turned it down. I compare the two of them. Anyway, he said no, he couldn't do that. And so, now was it Fox or was it James Naylor? That's something we'll have to look up, but I just have to think of that when I told you about it.
Did you see a conflict between the peace of the Quakers and
No.
fighting while you were in service?
No, we had Russia barricaded Berlin, you see. Russia had Berlin barricaded, and no traffic was allowed to go into the city. And the U.S. Air Force sent planes in with everything that the city, they sent coal in on airplanes. And that's why it was assigned over there. And the ironic thing about it, is lots of people don't understand, but I got one medal that I have was a Humane Actions Medal for serving in the U.S. Air Force during the Berlin airlift, because General Clay wanted to send an armored train through there, and Harry Truman said no. We will try everything in the world before we start a war. He said we'll try everything else. So they sent the airplanes in, and an airplane took off from the air base there where I was every 3 minutes, and they'd fly to Berlin, which wasn't a big distance. You think of Europe, everything's close together there, not like it is here, vast distances. But they sent an airplane out, and if he didn't land during his 3-minute slot, he had to turn around and come back and land again and take off, get in line and take off again. It was that regulated because they flew 24 hours a day. And count that up, airplane every 3 minutes. I mean, that's some of them come back, load up, take off again. No.
And Jack, remind us, how long did they do that for? Was that months?
Over a year, but I don't remember exactly how. When Russia decided that they were whipped, so they won the appreciation of the whole world. I mean, they noticed a humane action we made lots of friends that way with the Germans who had been our enemies, you see. I had relatives in Germany, and I visited. They said the Americans paid for everything that they asked for, and paid for everything you did for them, and said the others, the French and the English, stole the blind what they said. So I mean, your friends and neighbors set a good example.
Jack?
Yep.
Coincidentally, my father worked for a German chemical company here in the States.
Yeah.
And after the war, the U.S. government sent him over to Germany in '47 for 3 months.
Yeah.
To manage a plant.
IG Farben.
No, it was General Aniline and film.
I see. I don't remember those, but I remember that IG Farben.
Well, General Aniline was in film also.
What town was it in?
I don't know what town he went to, but I remember I was 5 years old, and I remember mother sitting in the kitchen table crying almost every night
Because he.
when he was over there for those 3 months.
Well,
This is later, but did the Quakers have anything to do with the coming down of the Berlin Wall peaceably? No.
not that I know of, but now there was Quakers over there working besides that. There were Quakers over there working. Do you remember Lou?
Yes.
Lou Evans?
Sure.
She was in Germany at the same time.
Sure.
Lou Evans
Yeah.
from Crossville.
Yeah, I remember
They
her.
used to come to meetings.
She's still alive, isn't she, in
No,
Pennsylvania?
I don't think so. They moved to
Pennsylvania.
Collegedale,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
I went to her husband's funeral, but I didn't hear that she had passed on.
I didn't know he died there. I thought he died
Bill-
up in Pennsylvania.
Bill Evans. Well, yeah, there was a meeting here. I guess it wasn't a funeral. Yeah.
Any other questions about? Okay.
I kept
Thank you,
getting you
Jack.
off track. I'm sorry, Jack.
Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Jack, I have one more question, sorry. Just for the video, could you say again the names of those pastors and where they came from? Just for the video, could you say the name of those pastors and where they came
Okay, Harold and Ann Kuhn, Kuhn. He was from Kansas, she was from Virginia. It was Ann Nash, N-A-S-H was her maiden name. Thank you.
And will you say your name and where you were in Germany? Say your name and where you were in Germany.
Jack Hoefer in Wiesbaden in the Air Force, 4 years.
And what years and what,
1947 to 1951.
and what, in this date now? The date that you're doing this now?
What's today?
It's November the 5th, 2023.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jack, for doing it.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry for going off track. I knew Lee all these years, and I